The envelope of cash was thinner than the debt on her kitchen table. She folded the foreclosure notice twice, then a third time. Her mother coughed in the next room, and Lauren Hayes, 28, black, a county hospital nurse still in light blue scrubs, circled a red number in a classifieds page. $4,000 a week, overnight private care, no questions. My loves, I have seen women make that phone call before. I know that silence between the first ring and the second. A black SUV took her past a wrought iron gate she had only seen from bus windows. Inside the mansion, a lieutenant in charcoal gray handed her 3 rules and a badge with her name on it. Her patient was a frail Korean matriarch in ivory silk, breathing like a candle in a draft. Then Lauren met him, Kang Tae-hyun, the quiet wolf, black Italian suit, silver watch, a hanja for trust, half hidden under his collar, and a black ink tiger climbing the right side of his neck. He did not look at her the way rich men look at women in uniform. He looked at her like a door he had not authorized. Aigu, that kind of man. At 2 a.m, she saw a gloved hand slide something into the matriarch's IV. She saw a little girl in pink pajamas clutch a torn-eared rabbit and whisper a word Lauren was not ready to hear. And what Lauren did next? Before starting the story, comment down below where you are watching from and what time it is there. If stories of karma, love, and hidden truths move you, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a member and help our channel. Lauren Hayes signed her name at the bottom of the shift log, and the pen skipped on the last letter. 16 hours. Her wrist wrote it before her brain confirmed it. The county hospital hallway smelled the way it always smelled at 4 a.m, bleach that had given up on the blood underneath, and coffee that had been reheated so many times it tasted like paper. Nurse Ellis passed her without slowing. "You look like a ghost." "Ghosts sleep," Lauren said. She capped the pen. She had already stayed 4 hours past her double. The trauma bay had swallowed a car accident at 11, another at 1, and a domestic at 2:40. She had held a young man's femoral artery closed with 2 fingers for 11 minutes, while the resident argued about which OR was free. When the resident finally decided, the young man was already gone. Lauren had washed her hands 3 times and gone back to charting. Now the fluorescent lights buzzed the way they buzz when a person has been under them too long, when the buzz stops being sound and starts being a small vibration inside the teeth. She untied the sneakers she had bought secondhand from a nurse who retired to Florida. The soles were worn on the inside edge. Her feet rolled a little when she walked. It had been fine 6 months ago. It was starting not to be fine. She stepped into the locker room and did what she always did after a run like that. She stood in front of her locker with the door closed and put both palms flat on the metal, counted to 10, then opened it. Her coat was inside. Her phone was inside. 3 missed calls from her mother's landline. A text from the pharmacy at 11:12 p.m. Refill on hold. Payment method declined. Please contact prescriber. Lauren read it twice. She put the phone in her coat pocket, in the inside pocket, the one with the zipper. Then she walked out into the cold with the coat still open, because she had learned a long time ago that the cold on her chest was the thing that kept her awake for the drive. The car smelled like the pine air freshener she had bought 2 Christmases ago and never replaced. She sat with her hands on the wheel and did not turn the key. Not yet. Her breath fogged the inside of the windshield. She watched the fog spread and fade and spread again, and she did the arithmetic she had been doing every night for 6 weeks. Rent, past due, $1,700. Utilities, past due, $340. The car payment they had let slide twice, $420. The pharmacy, $2,300. Because her mother's medication was the kind of medication that pharmaceutical companies priced at exactly the number that would break a working woman without quite killing her mother. $4,760. To keep breathing until the next paycheck, which was 2 weeks away, and which was already promised to the first two lines of the list. She turned the key. The drive home was 34 minutes at that hour. She took the long way because the short way went past the hospital where she had done her clinicals, and the sight of that building had, lately, started to make her chest tighten in a way she did not want to examine. She drove past the shuttered laundromat and the taqueria with its steel gate down and the church that always left one small yellow light on above the side door, and she thought about nothing at all, because thinking about something meant thinking about the arithmetic, and she had done the arithmetic. She parked in front of the two-story on Ashland with the porch railing that leaned. She sat for a second before she got out. The porch lamp was still on. Her mother had left it on for her again. She saw the paper on the door before she saw the paper on the door. A person notices these things sideways at first. The wrong color, the wrong texture, taped where nothing should be taped. Then the eye catches up. It was a folded white sheet under a strip of blue painter's tape. She had seen one exactly like it 4 months ago, and she had gotten rid of that one by writing a check she should not have written and moving 3 things around that could not really be moved. This was the second. She climbed the 3 steps and pulled it off carefully so as not to rip the paint. She read it under the porch lamp with her breath making small clouds in front of the letters. Notice of foreclosure, second and final. She read the date, 60 days on the second and final. She folded the paper in thirds the way you fold a paper that goes in an envelope, and she put it in the inside pocket of her coat next to her phone. Then she unlocked the door quietly, because her mother slept lightly, and stepped in. The house had the warm, still smell of the humidifier. From the couch under the blanket she could hear Diane breathing, the slow rasp with the small catch at the end that Lauren had been listening to for 2 years now. The blanket had slipped off one foot. Lauren crossed the room and put it back. Diane opened her eyes. "You're late, baby." Ambulance came in at 2. "Alive?" "One of them." Diane's hand came up out of the blanket. She patted the cushion beside her. Lauren did not sit. She stood by the arm of the couch and kissed her mother's temple, and the temple was cool and a little damp, and her mother's silver and gray curly hair smelled like the coconut oil she had used since Lauren was small. The silver cross on the thin chain around her neck had turned itself around while she slept, so the small chain was on the front and the cross was at the nape. Lauren turned it back for her. "Take your medicine tonight?" Diane looked at the ceiling. "I skipped. Mama, I skipped so there'd be enough for tomorrow." "There is enough for tomorrow. There's 4 pills, Lauren." Lauren looked at the little brown bottle on the coffee table. 4 pills. She could see them from where she was standing without picking it up, because she had learned to count them at a glance from the shape of the shadow they made through the amber plastic. 4 pills. 2 days if her mother took the full dose. 4 days if her mother did what her mother had just told her she was doing. A month before the disease started catching up. "I'll call the pharmacy in the morning," Lauren said. "You called the pharmacy this morning." "I'll call them again." Diane looked at her. Diane had eyes that had been tired for a decade and still saw everything. "Baby." "Mama, sleep. There's an envelope by the phone." Lauren went to the phone. The envelope was from the mortgage company. Same handwriting on the front. She did not open it. She put it on top of the microwave with the other unopened envelopes, and the pile was leaning a little now, and she straightened it with her fingertip. "I'm going to change," she said. She kept her voice level. She had a voice she had built for this. In the bathroom, she washed her face with cold water because the hot water heater had a leak she was not calling anyone about. She stood in front of the small mirror and looked at herself. Honey brown skin gone dull under the fluorescent. Full lips cracked at one corner. Voluminous curls pulled up into a bun that had migrated to one side over the shift. Small silver studs in her ears, the ones her father had bought her the year before he left, which was the year she had turned 8. She did not know why she still wore them. She wore them. She took the studs out and put them in the little dish on the sink. She unpinned the bun and shook out the curls, and the curls fell heavy and warm around her shoulders, and she pressed the heels of her hands into her eyes for exactly 4 seconds, because more than 4 seconds was permission. Then she went to the kitchen table and opened her laptop. The kitchen table had a stack of index cards on it, blue lines. Each card had a number in the top right corner and a note underneath. She had been keeping these for 2 months. Every listing she had answered, every one that had not called back, every one that had called back with a number that was a lie. She flipped past the top 10. Home aides at $15 an hour. Assisted living overnights at $17. Hospice contracts that paid on 90-day terms. A woman in Riverdale who wanted a night nurse and was offering to trade rent on a room in her attic. The card at the very back was the one she had circled in red 4 days ago and not called. Private overnight nurse. Sensitive household. Discretion required. Compensation, $4,000 per week. Paid Friday. Cash or transfer. Immediate start. No name. A number with a Manhattan area code and 1 extra digit at the start she did not recognize. $4,000 a week. She had run the number 3 separate times in 3 separate moods to see if it stayed. It stayed. She had not called, because when a number stays that steady, the thing on the other end of the phone is not steady at all. She had grown up on the block long enough to know that. When somebody offers you a number that fixes your entire arithmetic in one Friday, they are not fixing your arithmetic. They are buying something. She looked at the little brown bottle through the doorway. 4 pills. She looked at the pile of envelopes. She looked at the second and final notice, folded now into the inside pocket of her coat, hanging over the back of the chair. She picked up the phone. The line rang once. A man answered. He did not say hello. "Ms. Hayes," he said. Lauren went still. "How do you know my name?" she said. Not a question. "You circled it in red," the man said. His English was quiet, careful, with the small, precise vowels of somebody who had learned the language on purpose, rather than by drift. 4 days ago, at the table under the kitchen window, Lauren looked at the kitchen window. The blinds were half closed. She had cranked them halfway earlier in the week and never finished. From the street, in the day, a person on the sidewalk could see the corner of the table if they leaned. At night, with the light on, they could see more than the corner. She turned the kitchen light off. The man on the phone waited. He did not fill the silence. That was the thing that told her the most. "When," she said. "A car will be at the corner of Ashland and Halstead in 40 minutes. Black SUV. The driver's name is Mr. Park. He will not speak to you. You will bring an overnight bag with clothes for 3 days. You will not tell your mother where you are going. You will not tell your mother anything. If she asks, you tell her the hospital called you in. I need to know who I'm working for. You will know when you arrive. I need a name." The line was quiet for 1 breath, then 2. "Kang," the man said, and hung up. Lauren sat with the phone in her hand for a long time. The kitchen was dark now, except for the small light above the stove that her mother left on for the moths. She heard her mother's breathing from the living room, the slow rasp with the small catch at the end. She heard the humidifier working. She heard, from somewhere blocks away, a dog that had been barking for as long as she had lived on this street. She heard her own pulse in her ears, steady, unhurried, professional, the pulse of a woman who had held a femoral artery closed with 2 fingers. She got up. She went into her bedroom without turning on the light and pulled the small duffel bag out from under the bed. She packed the way she packed for a hurricane shift. The scrubs, the 2 clean bras, the underwear counted, the socks doubled, the toothbrush, the small pouch of hairpins and the wide tooth comb, the stethoscope in its own case, the blood pressure cuff, the pen light, the little tin of gauze, the bottle of antiseptic she trusted more than the ones on hospital shelves. She hesitated over the second pair of shoes. She put them in. She hesitated over the small framed photograph on the dresser, her mother at 30, holding her at 4, both of them laughing at something outside the frame. She left it. She was coming back. She wrote a note. She used the pad by the phone. Mama, hospital called me in. Special case. I'll be back for breakfast Friday. Take the full dose. Don't skip. I love you. She underlined, don't skip. Twice. She put the note under the little brown bottle. Then she stood over the couch and watched her mother sleep for exactly 1 minute. She counted the breaths. 12. Not bad. She adjusted the blanket over the foot that always came out. She turned the small silver cross the right way around one more time. She left the porch lamp on. Outside, the air had the sharp, glassy quality of hours past midnight, in a city that had almost stopped moving. She walked the 2 blocks to the corner of Ashland and Halsted with the duffel bag on her shoulder and her coat buttoned all the way, and her curls loose and heavy down her back, because she had not thought to tie them again. The porch lights of the block glowed one after another. A cat crossed in front of her without looking at her. The dog somewhere blocks away kept barking at whatever it had been barking at. The SUV was already there. It was parked with the engine off. Black, matte, no license plate she could see from the sidewalk. The kind of vehicle that did not want to be described. She stopped at the corner and looked at it. The driver's window came down 1 inch. She could see part of a shoulder in a dark suit and the edge of a black leather glove on the wheel. Nothing more. Ms. Hayes, the voice said. A different voice, deeper, also unhurried. Mr. Park, she said. The window closed. The rear door on the sidewalk side unlocked with a small mechanical thunk. Lauren stood on the corner for 1 more second. She looked back down the block at the porch of the 2-story on Ashland, with the porch railing that leaned, and the porch lamp still on, and her mother inside under the blanket with the humidifier working, and 4 pills in a small brown bottle. She looked at it long enough to remember it exactly. Then she opened the door and got in. The interior smelled like new leather and something else underneath. Something clean, mineral, expensive, the way a locked room smells when nobody has been allowed to sweat in it. Mr. Park did not turn around. His hands stayed on the wheel in the black leather gloves he had not removed. In the small mirror above the dashboard, she could see the edge of a square jaw and the pale line of a small scar cutting through the left eyebrow. The car started. It made almost no sound. They pulled away from the corner of Ashland and Halsted and turned east. Lauren set the duffel between her feet. She kept her coat buttoned. She rested her hands, loose, on her lap, palm up, the way she rested them when she was waiting to be called into a code. She looked out the window at her block sliding past, at the closed taqueria and the church with its 1 small yellow light, at the porch lamp of the 2-story disappearing behind the corner. Then she looked forward. Mr. Park's eyes met hers in the mirror for a fraction of a second. It was not a friendly look. It was not an unfriendly look. It was the look of a man confirming an item on a list. The SUV took the ramp onto the expressway. The city fell away. Lauren Hayes closed her hand around the strap of the duffel bag between her feet and held it that way, all the way to Manhattan. The expressway at that hour was almost empty. A delivery van, a semi with its running lights on, a gray sedan with a woman behind the wheel who was crying. Lauren saw all of them without moving her head. The road became the tunnel. The tunnel became a bridge over water she could not see. The bridge became streets that curved. She lost the map in her head around the second turn onto a road with no signs. The car was choosing it for her. The neighborhood at the end had the wrong quiet. Not the quiet of a block that had gone to sleep. The quiet of a block that had been asked to. Wide sidewalks with nothing on them. Trees pruned by somebody who was paid to prune. A single dog somewhere behind a wall, and even that dog barked once and stopped. as if it had been trained to bark once and stop. The SUV slowed in front of a wall. The wall was stone, taller than the car, running the length of the block, broken by one iron gate. There was no name on the gate and no number on the wall. The gate opened before Mr. Park had to touch anything. He drove through it, and the gate closed behind them without a sound she could hear over the engine. The drive curved through trees she could not identify in the dark. Old trees, kept trees, the kind that had been planted by somebody who did not expect to see them full-grown, and had planted them anyway. At the end of the drive, the house rose in front of them, 3 stories of pale stone with tall, dark windows, and a single lamp burning above a set of double doors, and 2 men in black suits standing at the foot of the steps who did not move when the SUV stopped in front of them. Mr. Park killed the engine. He came around the car and opened her door. He did not offer her a hand. He waited. He watched the trees. Lauren stepped out. The gravel was raked. Her thin-soled shoes made almost no sound in it. One of the men at the steps came forward. He was shorter than Mr. Park, wiry, moving the way athletes move when they have stopped competing and started teaching. His suit was charcoal, well-fitted, black shirt buttoned to the throat, one small silver pin under his lapel she could see only because the lamp above the doors caught it at the right angle. "Ms. Hayes," he said. "Mr. Seo Min-jae, come with me, please." His English was easier than the voice on the phone. Warmer. Lauren did not trust warm. She followed him up the steps. Behind her, Mr. Park pulled her duffel from the car and carried it in one gloved hand. He did not offer it back to her. She let him keep it. There was a game already being played about who held what, and she had decided in the car that she was not going to lose the small games in the first 10 minutes. The double doors opened onto a hall with a marble floor the color of cream and a staircase that curved up into darkness. A grandfather clock ticked somewhere she could not see. A large arrangement of white orchids sat on a low table under a mirror. There was no dust anywhere. The air smelled like beeswax and cold stone. Mr. Seo stopped in the center of the hall and turned to face her. He put his hands behind his back. He looked at her, the way a man looks at a document he has already read. 3 rules, he said. She waited. 1. You do not ask questions about the family. Not who they are, not what they do, not why they need you. If a question forms in your mouth, you swallow it. He waited to see if she would nod. She did not nod. 2. You do not leave the second floor without an escort, not for water, not for air, not for a walk in the garden. If you need something, you press the small brass button by the bed. Someone will come. He waited again. She waited with him. 3. What you see in this house stays in this house. Not with your mother, not with a friend, not on a phone, not in a diary. If a thing enters your eyes here, it does not leave through your mouth anywhere else. He paused. Are the rules clear? They are clear, Lauren said. Do you accept them? She looked at the marble floor, and then at the curving stairs, and then at Mr. Seo. She had a second, where the whole shape of the night, from the porch lamp on Ashland to the orchids under the mirror, hovered in front of her like a curtain about to open. I accept them, she said. Mr. Seo inclined his head 1 degree. Then welcome, Ms. Hayes. Your patient is upstairs. He turned toward the staircase. Mr. Park stepped behind her with the duffel. The grandfather clock ticked once, deliberately, as if it had been waiting for her answer to begin the next minute. Lauren put her hand on the polished banister and started to climb. The stairs were wider than she expected, and quieter. Lauren counted them without meaning to. 14 up to the first landing, another 12 after the turn. Mr. Seo walked 2 steps behind her, close enough to hear her breathing, far enough that she could pretend she was walking alone. At the top, the hallway opened into a corridor, lit by amber sconces spaced too evenly. A young woman in a gray uniform waited by a closed door with a folded set of clothes over her forearm. She bowed her head half an inch when Lauren approached and held the clothes out without a word. "You change here," Mr. Co said. "The room at the end is yours. The door beside it is Madame Kang's. The rules are not repeated." Lauren took the clothes. The fabric was heavier than hospital cotton. Fitted white blouse, tailored white trousers, thin half apron with a small hidden pocket, a badge already stitched with her first name in dark thread. Someone had been sewing while she was still deciding. She changed in a room the size of her mother's apartment. There was a small bed under a window, a low dresser, a mirror framed in dark wood. On the dresser sat a covered tray with tea, rice porridge, and a slice of pear cut into 3 neat pieces. No card, no welcome, just food, in case she was hungry enough to eat food from strangers. Lauren pinned the badge to the blouse. She braided the front of her hair back and let the rest fall over one shoulder, the way her mother used to fix it before church. She looked at the mirror only long enough to make sure her hands were steady. Then she opened the door. Mr. Co was already gone. Madame Kang's door was ajar. The room smelled of eucalyptus and something older underneath, like paper kept too long in a drawer. Madame Kang lay on her side under the cream cashmere blanket, the small gold crane rising and falling with her breath. Her silver hair was still pinned with the jade pin. Her eyes were closed, but her fingers moved once, slow, when Lauren crossed the threshold. Lauren sat on the low chair beside the bed and checked the IV line first, then the wrist. The pulse was thin but steady, too thin for a woman who had eaten dinner 2 hours ago and no more. "Ma'am, I am Lauren," she said, quiet. "I will be with you tonight." Madame Kang's eyes opened a fraction. She did not turn her head. Her voice arrived from a place lower than her throat. "You came back." "Yes, ma'am." "Good." The eyelids fell again. Lauren stayed still. She had heard patients say strange things under sedation before. She had learned not to correct them. She held the old woman's hand until the fingers relaxed inside her palm. Somewhere in the mansion, a door closed. 2 floors down, maybe. The kind of closing that was meant to be heard. By the 3rd hour, Lauren had learned the sounds of the corridor, the hum of the air handler through the vents, the soft click of the ice machine down the hall, the measured footsteps of a guard who passed the door every 11 minutes. Not 10, not 12, 11, like a rule. At 1:30, she stepped out for water. The kitchen was 3 turns from the corridor, and lit by a single lamp over the marble island. A silver kettle waited on a warmer, as if someone had guessed she would come. Lauren poured. She was screwing the cap of a small thermos when the pantry door beyond the island moved. Yuna stood in the gap, both hands wrapped around the neck of the rabbit. The torn ear flopped over her thumb. "You are supposed to be sleeping, little one," Lauren said. Yuna did not answer. She walked across the tile in her thick socks, silent, and stopped in front of Lauren's knees. She lifted the rabbit and pressed it against Lauren's apron pocket, the way a child hides something before she asks a question. Lauren crouched. "Do you want to sit with me while your grandmother sleeps?" The girl nodded once, a tiny nod, all chin. "Then we walk slow, so no one wakes up." Yuna slipped her hand into Lauren's. Her palm was warm and small, the fingernails cut so short they looked painted on. They crossed the corridor together, the rabbit between them. Halfway down the hall, Yuna stopped and looked back over her shoulder, not at the kitchen, at a door on the left that Lauren had not seen open. The girl squeezed Lauren's hand harder without lifting her eyes. "That room?" Lauren asked, low. Yuna shook her head. Not a no, a warning. They kept walking. Inside Madame Kang's room, Lauren pulled a second chair from the corner and placed it against the wall, out of the sightline from the door. Yuna climbed onto it and folded her legs. The rabbit went into her lap. She stared at her grandmother's face for a long time before she leaned her cheek on the armrest, and let her eyes close. The clock on the mantel struck 2. Lauren was checking the IV bag when she felt it, the way a nurse feels a room change before anyone speaks. The line was drier than it should have been. The label on the bag matched the chart. The rate on the pump matched the label. Everything was correct in the way that only careful hands make things correct. She looked at Madame Kang's mouth, slightly parted, a little too slack for a woman who had spoken clearly 40 minutes earlier. Behind her, the door opened without a sound. She did not turn. She kept her hand on the IV clamp and watched the reflection in the dark screen of the small monitor by the bed. Mr. Park's shape filled the doorway. Gloves on, he carried a small kidney tray. He crossed to the far side of the bed with the calm of a man who had done this on other nights and expected to do it again. He set the tray on the side table. He drew a syringe from the tray. He uncapped it. He fitted the tip into the injection port on the IV line, the one that fed directly toward Madame Kang's arm. Lauren spoke before he pushed the plunger. "Excuse me." Her voice was not loud. It was the voice she used with patients who had panicked in the middle of the night. Even, warm, a voice that took the room by the shoulders. Mr. Park froze for half a second. Then he continued the motion as if she had not spoken. "Sir," Lauren said, and this time she was already moving. Her hand closed over the injection port before his thumb could press. "I am the night nurse. I have not been told about this dose. I need to see the order." Under the blanket, Madame Kang's eyes opened. Not fully, just enough. "Careful," the old woman whispered. She was not warning Lauren about Mr. Park. She was warning Mr. Park about Lauren. Mr. Park's flat expression did not change. He withdrew the syringe. He recapped it with one hand, the way a man recaps a pen. He picked up the tray. He left the room without looking at her once, and the door closed the same way it had opened. Lauren stayed with her fingers on the port until she heard his footsteps turn at the far end of the corridor. Then she lifted her hand and pressed the back of her wrist against her own throat to feel her pulse. It was steady. That surprised her more than it should have. She checked the port for any droplet residue. Nothing. She checked Madame Kang's pupils. Slow, but not pinpoint. She checked the color of the IV bag. Amber clear. In the chair by the wall, Yuna had not opened her eyes, but her small hand was gripping the rabbit's neck tight enough that the seam on its shoulder had begun to strain. The clock struck the quarter hour. Lauren sat on the edge of the bed. She took Madame Kang's hand. She waited. "Ma'am," she said, so soft only the two of them could hear. "Who is he to you?" Madame Kang's throat moved. She did not open her eyes again. "He works for my son." "And your son knows?" A long pause. Long enough that Lauren thought the answer would not come. "My son thinks he is protecting me." Lauren did not ask the next question. She knew better than to press a woman who had used her strength to say 2 sentences. She adjusted the blanket over the frail shoulder and stood. She was not going to sleep tonight. At 3:30, she opened the door to check the corridor and found him standing at the end of it. He had not knocked. He had not spoken to a guard. He was simply there, 3 meters from her, in black tailored trousers and a black shirt with the sleeves rolled to the mid-forearm. No jacket, no tie. The lamp at his back cut a hard line down the side of his face and caught the ink at his neck. Lauren stepped fully into the corridor and pulled the door behind her almost shut, leaving a hand's width of gap so she could hear the room. She kept her voice low. "Mr. Kang, you touched my mother's IV. I stopped a man from injecting something into it without an order." "He had an order. Then I need to see it before the next dose." He walked toward her, not fast. 2 even steps, the polished floor giving back no sound under his shoes. He stopped closer than a stranger stops, close enough that she had to lift her chin half an inch to keep her eyes on his. "You have been in this house for 6 hours, he said. 6? "Yes, sir." And already you are telling my people what they may and may not do. I am telling your people the rules of my license. His head tilted. Not much. Enough that the tiger at his neck moved with him, and she saw the small cloud tail curl behind his ear, the way a signature curls at the end of a name. By sunrise, he said, you will not be in this house. Behind them, Madame Kang's voice arrived down the corridor, thin as a thread. She stays. Taehyun's eyes did not leave Lauren's face, but something in the corner of his jaw moved. She stays, my son. He did not answer his mother. He looked at Lauren for another full breath, and Lauren met the look without dropping hers. Then he turned and walked back the way he had come. He did not close a door behind him. He did not have to. The night nurse, who was not leaving, pushed Madame Kang's door open and went back inside. At 6 a.m., she was still awake. She had refilled the water carafe, rewritten the vitals log in her own clean hand, and moved Yuna to the couch beside the window, where the first gray light was starting to soften the glass. The rabbit slept on the girl's chest. Mr. Seo came at 6:10 with a small tray of tea. He set it on the low table. You are staying, he said, not a question. For now. There will be a contract before noon. I read every line. The corner of his mouth moved in what was almost a smile and was not. Good, he said. Do that. He left. The tea steamed. Lauren drank it standing. The contract was thick. It arrived at 11 in the hands of a lawyer in a gray suit who put it on the study desk in front of her and stepped back. Taehyun stood by the tall window with his hands behind him and did not look at her while she read. She read every line. $4,000 a week, wired weekly to any account she named, room and board inside the residence, 1 day off every 15. No cameras in Madame Kang's room or in the nurses' quarters. No cameras. That line had been added in a different pen. Then the clauses that were not about money. No contact with anyone outside the household about the health, habits, or presence of any member of the family. No photograph of any room. No name spoken outside the walls. Breach of confidentiality to be pursued by every legal instrument available and by others. Lauren read that line twice. She looked up. By others. Taehyun turned his head a quarter. Legal counsel prefers to be broad. Legal counsel wrote a threat into a nursing contract. Legal counsel wrote a warning into a nursing contract. She looked at the lawyer. The lawyer looked at his shoes. She looked at Taehyun. I want one addition, she said. Go on. If I ever believe your mother is being harmed by anyone in this house, including a physician of your choosing, I have the authority to stop the intervention until you personally review it, in writing. The lawyer inhaled, the way lawyers inhale before they say no. Taehyun raised one finger. The lawyer stopped inhaling. Add it, Taehyun said. The lawyer added it. He printed the addition. He slid the pages across. Lauren signed each initial box in the same steady hand she used on medication charts. She signed the last page under her full name. She capped the pen and set it exactly parallel to the edge of the desk. Taehyun watched her cap the pen. You wired money to a hospital account this morning, he said. She did not answer that. Chestnut Street, room 4B, the oncology floor. Her jaw did not tighten, but she felt it want to. You had someone check on my mother. I had someone confirm she is in a room. That is all. Do not have someone check on my mother again. For the first time, he looked at her fully. He did not smile. He did not soften. But something behind his eyes registered the sentence and filed it in a place it would not leave from. Understood. She took her copy of the contract, folded it once, and slipped it into the inside pocket of the half apron. She walked out of the study without turning her back on him more than she had to. That afternoon, Yuna would not eat. The girl sat at the low table in the sunroom with a bowl of rice porridge in front of her and her rabbit on her lap. She stirred the porridge with the tip of the spoon. She did not lift the spoon to her mouth. The housekeeper, a small woman with a kind, pinched face, tried 3 times in careful Korean. Yuna shook her head each time and stared at the corner where the wallpaper met the ceiling. Lauren knelt at the side of the table. "Little one, may I sit?" Yuna's eyes shifted to her without moving her head. A small nod. Lauren sat cross-legged on the floor. She did not touch the bowl. She reached instead for the rabbit and, very gently, straightened the torn ear so it flopped forward again the way it had flopped in the hallway. "He likes his ear that way, right?" Yuna nodded. "My mother," Lauren said, "when I was your age, she used to sing when the food was too hot. She said the song cooled it faster than blowing." Yuna's spoon stopped moving. "Do you want to hear the song?" Another nod. Lauren hummed a lullaby her mother had hummed to her 100 nights, low and even, in a key that had nothing to do with the room they were in. She hummed it once through, then she picked up the spoon, filled it halfway, and held it in the air, not toward the girl's mouth, just steady in the space between them. Yuna leaned forward and took the spoon between her lips. She ate half the bowl before she stopped. It was the most food she had taken in front of a stranger in months, though Lauren did not know that yet. She only knew that when the small mouth closed on the spoon, something in the room let out a breath it had been holding. In the doorway behind Lauren, a shape stayed for a moment and moved on before she could turn. That night, Madame Kang asked for the window to be opened. Lauren opened it 2 fingers wide. The cold slid in along the sill. "You know what he is," the old woman said. Lauren sat down beside the bed. "I know what he does. That is not the same thing." "No, ma'am, it is not." Madame Kang's hand found hers on the blanket. The grip was weak, but it was a grip. "There is a woman in this story," she said. "Not me, not you. A woman who is not here anymore." Lauren waited. "You will find her before he does." "Who?" The old woman closed her eyes. Her breathing evened. Whatever door had opened for a sentence, closed again. Lauren sat with her a long time. She did not let go of the hand. On the 5th night, the child slept without waking. It was the first thing anyone in the house noticed together. The housekeeper crossed herself. Mr. Seo, passing in the corridor, nodded once at Lauren without stopping. Madame Kang, at breakfast, asked for a second slice of pear. On the 6th night, Taehyun was waiting in the corridor when Lauren came out of Madame Kang's room to refill the carafe. He held an envelope, thick, cream paper, no writing on the front. "For your mother's medication," he said. "My salary covers it. Your salary covers rent, food, and the medication for 4 months. This covers the 6 months after that. I do not take charity, Mr. Kang. It is not charity. It is a decision I made about someone in my household. I am staff. You are the reason my mother ate today." She looked at the envelope. She looked at his face. She lifted her chin, the half-inch she had lifted it in the hallway the first night. "I take a paycheck," she said. "I do not take pity." He held the envelope for another beat. Then he lowered his hand and let it drop against his thigh. He did not put it away. He looked at her the way a man looks at a lock he did not expect. "Noted," he said. He walked past her toward the stairs. 2 steps down, without turning, he added, "The offer remains open. Refuse it as often as you like." The tiger at his neck disappeared into the shadow of the stairwell. Lauren stood in the corridor a long moment before she filled the carafe. On the 7th morning, she opened Madame Kang's chart to log the 6 a.m. vitals and stopped with her pen a finger above the page. The dose entry from the previous night was in Dr. Han's neat handwriting. The bag she had hung with her own hands had held a different concentration. Not by much. Enough. She looked at the pump, she looked at the bag, she looked at the number in the chart. Her thumb went to the pocket of her half-apron, to the folded contract, to the clause she had added in her own words and made him sign. She read it once inside her head, to be sure it said what she remembered it saying. Then she picked up the pen and, in the vitals column, in the space where a nurse writes what she has seen, she wrote a single line in a hand so steady it looked printed. Someone in this house is lying about the medication. She closed the chart. She slid it back onto the shelf where anyone with a key could find it. Downstairs, a door opened, and Dr. Hahn's polite, cold laugh carried up the marble. Lauren stayed on the landing until the laugh below faded into the study. She counted to 20, slow, the way she counted breaths on a coding patient. Then she went down the back stairs, the ones the maids used, because the front stairs would put her in Dr. Hahn's line of sight, and tonight, she needed to be somewhere he was not. The kitchen was empty. A kettle sighed on the low flame. Someone had left a tray half prepared, a small porcelain cup, a saucer, a folded linen napkin the color of bone. Lauren stopped beside it. The cup was the one that went upstairs to Madame Kang each night at 11. Chamomile, honey, a spoon of ginger. She lifted the linen. Under it, a small paper packet, no label. The corner was folded twice, precise, the way a pharmacist folds a powder. She put the linen back exactly as it had been. Behind her, a shoe pressed on tile. She turned without hurry. Mr. Park stood in the doorway, gloves on. He was not supposed to be in the kitchen at this hour. The kitchen was staff country. The gloves were the point of him. Every time she saw them, she remembered the IV line at 2 a.m., the way the little cap on the syringe had caught the hallway light. "Something you need," he said. Not a question. "Water for the little one," Lauren said. She woke up. His eyes went to the tray, then back to her. "The cup is for upstairs." "I know what the cup is for." He held the doorframe with one gloved hand and looked at her as if she were an object being priced. She let him. She had been looked at like this in emergency rooms by surgeons who did not want a nurse pointing at their chart. She knew the shape of it. She knew how to survive it. You stay still, you keep your face empty, you make yourself boring to look at. She filled a glass with tap water. She left the kitchen without turning her back to him. Yuna was awake in the small room off the west corridor. She sat on top of the covers, legs crossed, rabbit pressed under her chin. The nightlight painted a soft ring on the wall. When Lauren came in, the girl did not run to her. She only opened her arms an inch, just enough for the rabbit to shift, and waited. Lauren sat on the edge of the bed. "I heard the man laugh," Yuna said. Her English was small and careful, the way a child speaks a language they only use with one person. "That's the doctor, he's leaving soon." "He always leaves, then he comes back." Lauren smoothed the fringe out of the child's eyes. Yuna leaned into the hand. That was the whole conversation. There were nights when Yuna spoke 10 words, and nights when she spoke 2. Lauren had learned to accept whichever night she was given. "Drink," Lauren said, and held out the glass. Yuna drank 3 swallows, then she pushed the rabbit into Lauren's lap. "He's tired," the girl whispered. "Can he sleep with you?" Lauren looked down at the toy. The ear was torn. The stuffing had gone thin along the belly, as if a small hand had squeezed it in the same place for years. There was a seam along the back that had been re-sewn at least twice, the thread darker than the fabric. "He can sleep with you tonight," Lauren said. "I'll be here." She stayed until Yuna's breath went long. Then she carried the glass out and put it on the hall table and stood for a moment in the dark of the corridor, feeling how the house held its breath around her. Down the hall, the study door opened. Dr. Hahn came out first, coat over his arm, bag in his other hand. Behind him, Mr. So. Taehyun stayed inside. She could tell from the light. The doctor said something soft in Korean. Mr. So answered shorter, softer, the way a man answers when he is not agreeing. Dr. Han passed her in the corridor without looking up. His polite, cold smile moved automatically as he went by, the way a lamp turns on a sensor. "Good night, Nurse Hayes." "Good night, Doctor." He was almost past her when he stopped. "Your bag?" he said. Lauren looked at him. "You left your work bag in the west sitting room this afternoon. I moved it to the coat closet so the housekeeper would not trip on it." "Thank you," she said, and her mouth was dry. He smiled the smile again and walked on. She waited until his footsteps were gone. Then she went to the coat closet. Her bag was there. The zipper was closed. The strap was folded the way she folded it. She lifted it, and she knew before her hand was fully inside. The weight was wrong. She carried the bag to the small staff bathroom off the kitchen corridor and locked the door and turned on the water and set the bag on the sink counter. She opened it slowly, her stethoscope, her small penlight, the folded scrub top she kept as a spare, the zippered pouch of alcohol wipes. At the bottom, under the pouch, a paper envelope she did not own. Inside the envelope, 3 glass vials, small vials, amber glass, white labels with red banding. She knew the banding before she read the print. The banding was for controlled substances, the drawer at the hospital that took 2 signatures to open. She turned 1 vial in her fingers. The lot number matched the number she had memorized from Madame Kang's chart, the number that was supposed to be in Dr. Han's locked cabinet. She sat down on the closed lid of the toilet and put the vials on her knee and pressed her palms flat against her thighs to stop the tremor. He had planted them. He had known she would look at the chart. He had known she would ask. He had known enough about her to know she would not run, so he had built a story where the drugs left his cabinet and traveled, on their own, into her bag. In the morning, he would discover the loss. He would call for Mr. Co. He would ask, with a small pained face, whether anyone new had been in the medication room, and Mr. Co. would look at her, and Tae-hyun would look at her, and a black gloved hand would close around her wrist. Lauren looked at herself in the mirror above the sink. She did not cry. She did not shake her head. She only looked the way she used to look at herself before a night shift when she was tired down to the bone and knew she still had 10 hours to give. Then she put the vials back in the envelope. She put the envelope back at the bottom of her bag exactly where she had found it. She closed the zipper the way it had been closed. She unlocked the door. She did not run. Running would be the same as signing. She went back down the corridor and up the back stairs and stopped in front of Madame Kang's door and knocked once, softly. "Come." Madame Kang was awake. The lamp beside her bed was low. The cream blanket lay across her knees. She looked smaller in the lamplight than she looked by day, and more alert, as if the sedative had not yet caught up with the hour. "Sit," she said. Lauren sat on the chair by the bed. She kept her voice very low. "Ma'am, I need to ask you a question, and I need you to answer it fast." "Ask. Who put my name on that job listing?" Madame Kang's eyes moved once, over Lauren's face, slow. "I did." "Why?" The old woman folded her hands on top of the blanket. The jade pin in her hair caught the lamp. "Not tonight, child. Tonight is not for that story." "Then what is tonight for?" "Tonight is for you to know I trust you. That is all you need." Lauren swallowed. "Someone put drugs in my bag." Madame Kang closed her eyes for a long second. When she opened them, there was no surprise there. Only a tired recognition, the way an old soldier recognizes a formation. "Han. Yes. He is careful." The old woman's mouth pulled into something that was not quite a smile. "He always waits for the new person to look. Then he moves." "Ma'am, what is he giving you?" "I don't know the name, only that after I drink, I sleep, and I dream in the wrong language." Lauren leaned forward. "I can draw your blood tonight. I can send it to a lab I trust, outside this house." You cannot walk out of this house with anything he did not put in your hand. Then I need someone in this house who can. Madame Kang looked at her a long time. My son, she said, does not trust women. I noticed. He will not trust you because you are honest. He will trust you because you were useful and did not ask for anything. I am not asking. I know. The old woman lifted one thin hand and laid it on Lauren's wrist. Her fingers were cool. Take the blood. Hide the tube. When they come for you, do not defend yourself with words. Show them the tube. Ma'am, when they come for me, tonight, or the next, Han does not wait. Lauren nodded once. She stood. She went to the small refrigerated case near the window where Madame Kang's daily supplies were kept, and she opened her nurse's kit, and she worked the way she had worked 1,000 nights on 1,000 arms, the tourniquet, the swab, the small even breath before the stick. Madame Kang did not flinch. The vial filled dark and slow. Lauren labeled it in her own hand, not with the patient's name, with a code, 3 letters and a date. She wrapped it in a folded gauze and slipped it inside the inner lining of her scrub jacket, in the seam over her ribs, the seam she had cut open with cuticle scissors on her second night here, and re-sewn with a single loose stitch that would open under a fingernail. Go, Madame Kang said. Sleep near the child. If they come, they will come to you first. Lauren stopped at the door. Ma'am, whatever debt you owe, it's paid tonight. Madame Kang smiled, really smiled, for the first time since Lauren had known her. Small, tired, fierce. Not yet, my dear. Lauren walked to Yuna's room. She did not sleep. She sat on the floor beside the child's bed with her back against the wall and the rabbit tucked under her arm, because Yuna had rolled and dropped it, and Lauren could not put it back without waking the girl. She sat and she listened to the house, the clocks, the heater, a far door, a step on marble, then nothing, then another step. She held the rabbit tighter and did not notice she was holding it. At 2:47, footsteps came for her, 3 of them, Mr. Park in front. Behind him, a man she had seen at the gate and one she had not. They did not knock. Mr. Park opened the door and stood there. Downstairs. She rose without speaking. She set the rabbit gently on Yuna's pillow. Yuna did not wake. Lauren closed the door behind her without letting the latch click. They walked her down, not roughly, not gently, the way a body is walked when the outcome is already decided in another room, and this is only the transfer. The study door was open. The lamp on the desk was on. The rest of the room was dark. On the desk, laid out on a black cloth like evidence in a courtroom, were the envelope and the 3 amber vials. Taehyun stood at the window with his back to the room, black shirt, sleeves rolled to the forearm, the small tiger claw on his inner wrist catching the lamp when he moved. Mr. Seo was against the wall to Lauren's right, hands folded in front of him, face unreadable. Dr. Han stood at the corner of the desk. He had put his coat back on. The polite, cold smile was gone. In its place was something that looked, from a distance, like sorrow. Kang Sa-jungnim, the doctor said softly. I am so sorry. Taehyun did not turn. Explain? Dr. Han lifted a hand toward the vials. These were removed from the locked cabinet in the east wing, between 4 and 6 this evening. The cabinet has 3 keys. Mine, Mr. Seo's, and, for the last 11 days, Nurse Hayes. I did an inventory tonight, because Madame's chart showed inconsistencies I could not account for. I found the loss. I asked Mr. Park to look. He found them in her bag. Silence. Mr. Park spoke once. In her bag. Under the wipes. I opened it in front of the doctor. Doctor, Mr. Seto said quietly, when did you last see Nurse Hayes near the cabinet? This morning, Dr. Han said. She asked me to review Madame's medication schedule. She was in the room with the cabinet for several minutes, while I stepped out to take a call. Convenient, Mr. Co murmured. Necessary, the doctor said. His voice was gentle. Kangsa Jangnim, I understand you have grown to trust her. I have also grown to like her, but I must show you what I found. Taehyun turned then. He did not look at Dr. Han. He did not look at Mr. Seo. He looked at Lauren. She held his eyes. Nurse Hayes, he said. Yes. You will speak now. She thought about begging. She thought about the words that would come out of a woman who was innocent and terrified and wanted to live. She thought about how those words would sound in this room, tonight, with 3 vials on a black cloth, and she understood, in the space of one breath, that begging would kill her. She thought about her mother, at home, in the small apartment on the 18th block, alone with the pill bottle that was almost empty. She thought about the second foreclosure notice she had pinned to the fridge as a promise to herself. She spoke evenly. Check your mother's blood, then decide. Taehyun did not move. Dr. Han's face changed. Only a flicker, a muscle at the jaw, then the sorrow was back. Kang Sajangnim, this is deflection, she was caught with. I have a tube, Lauren said. She did not raise her voice. Drawn tonight, from Madame Kang. With her permission, send it to any lab outside this house. Any one you choose. I will give you the tube in front of everyone in this room right now. If it is clean, I will walk into whatever you decide to do with me, and I will not fight. If it is not clean, you will know who has been feeding your mother. The lamp hummed. Mr. Seo's hands unfolded slowly. Dr. Han laughed once. Short, polite. Kangsa Jangnim, she has been in this house 11 days. She is telling you a wife's tale to save her. Where is the tube? Taehyun said. Lauren did not look away from him. Inside my jacket, left side, along the ribs. He crossed the room, not fast, not slow. He stopped in front of her close enough that she could smell the faint clean of soap on his shirt and the cold of the window still on his skin. He looked down at her, and for a second, the mask he wore for every other person in this house was not there. Something underneath it was watching her, tired, hard, weighing. Show me. She lifted her hand to the seam. Her fingers found the loose stitch. She pulled. The gauze slipped down into her palm. She unwrapped it and held out the vial on her open hand. Blood dark and steady in the amber glass, her code label, her handwriting. He took it without touching her fingers. For a long moment, the only sound in the study was Dr. Han's breathing, gone slightly shorter. Taehyun turned to Mr. So. A car, now. The lab in Fort Lee. Wake whoever has to be woken. I want a name on what is in this tube before sunrise. Yes, boss. Doctor. Dr. Han lifted his chin. His voice was almost steady. Yes, Kang Sajangnim. You will remain in this house until the result is in my hand. Of course. Mr. Park will be at your door. The gloved man did not react. He only tilted his head a fraction, acknowledging. Taehyun looked at the vials on the black cloth. He looked at the envelope. He looked at Lauren. He did not thank her. He did not apologize. He walked back to the window and put the tube in the inside pocket of his jacket and stood there with his back to the room again. Take her upstairs, he said. Do not lock the door. Mr. Seo stepped forward. He did not touch her arm. He only tilted his head toward the corridor. Lauren walked out first. They were halfway up the stairs when a phone rang somewhere in the back of the house. Not a landline, one of the mobiles the men carried. Then footsteps, fast. Then a voice she did not know, calling for Mr. Seo in Korean, 3 sharp words. Mr. Seo stopped on the stair. His face did not change. He answered once, short. Then he turned to Lauren. Your mother, he said quietly. There has been a call from your neighbor, an ambulance. The staircase tilted under her feet. She put her hand on the banister. The wood was cold. She pressed until her knuckles went pale. Somewhere upstairs, Yuna cried out in her sleep. One high, sharp sound, the kind of sound a child makes when the dream reaches for her from inside the house. Lauren did not move. Down the corridor, Dr. Han's door closed with the smallest click, and on the other side of it, very faintly, he began to laugh. Taehyun stood in front of the study window for a long time after the men left, his back to the desk where the vials still sat in their little glass row like witnesses waiting to speak. The lamp behind him threw his shadow long across the rug. He had not turned around once since Lauren said the words. He had heard them the way a man hears a lock click in a language he thought he had forgotten. Check your mother's blood, then decide. He crossed the room in 5 strides and lifted the phone. The man he called did not work for the syndicate. He had never worked for the syndicate. He was a pathologist who ran a small private lab in Queens, and 11 years ago, Taehyun had put his daughter through college for reasons that had nothing to do with business. The phone rang twice. When the man answered, Taehyun spoke in Korean, low and short, 3 sentences. I need a full toxicology panel. Tonight. Discreet. The pathologist did not ask questions. He said only, send it. Taehyun hung up and walked to the study door and opened it. Mr. Seo was already there, waiting the way loyal men wait, one hand behind his back. Taehyun spoke without looking at him. Go upstairs. Draw 2 vials of mother's blood. Yourself. Not the nurse. Not the doctor. You. Put them in a cooler and drive them to this address. He wrote the address on a slip of paper and pressed it into Mr. Seo's palm. If Dr. Han asks where you are going, say nothing. If he tries to stop you, remove him from the hallway. Mr. Seo bowed once, small and precise, and went. Taehyun closed the door and stood in the silence and pressed the heel of his hand against his sternum, as if something were shifting there, and he needed to hold it in place. Down the hall, in the small windowless room where the men had left her, Lauren sat on the wooden chair with her wrists in her lap. They had not tied her, there was no need. The door was locked from the outside, and a man stood in the corridor with an earpiece and a flat face, and everyone in the room and outside it understood the geometry. She counted her breath the way a nurse counts a patient's. In 4, hold 2, out 6. When her hands stopped trembling, she opened the small pocket sewn into the inside of her scrub top, the one only nurses know how to sew, and she took out the folded paper napkin from earlier that day. The white rabbit had been in Yuna's arms every hour Lauren had spent in this house. 29 days. The child had let Lauren brush its ear once, and Lauren had felt the small hard lump under the fur, the shape wrong for stuffing, the seam repaired twice with 2 different threads. She had said nothing at the time. She had noted it the way a nurse notes a bruise that does not match the story. She had drawn it on a napkin in the servant's kitchen and folded the napkin and put it in the inside pocket, because a woman who has been fired once for asking the wrong question learns to keep her evidence on her body. She unfolded the napkin now and looked at her own small drawing. A rabbit, a circle where the lump was, an arrow, 3 question marks. She refolded it. She put it back. She waited. Upstairs, Mr. Seo entered Madame Suyeon Kang's room without knocking. Dr. Han was there, sitting in the visitor's chair beside the bed, a chart open across his knees. He looked up with the polite, cold smile. Mr. Seo, is there news? Master's order, Mr. Seo said. He crossed to the bedside and opened the small refrigerated case at his hip. 2 vials, direct draw. Dr. Han's smile did not change, but something behind his glasses did. That is not necessary. I have blood from this morning. Master's order. I would like to speak with him. He is not available. Dr. Han rose slowly. I really must insist. Mr. Sao turned his head 1 degree. Behind him, in the doorway, The second lieutenant had appeared without a sound. Dr. Hahn looked at him, and then at Mr. Seo, and then, with the delicate composure of a man who had built his life on knowing exactly when to step back, he sat down again and folded his hands over the chart. Madame Kang's eyes opened. She looked at Mr. Seo, she looked at the needle, she lifted her thin wrist from the blanket herself and rested it on the sheet and closed her eyes again, and the smallest sound came from her throat, and it was not fear, it was something older, relief. Mr. Seo drew the blood, he capped the vials, he walked out of the room without looking at Dr. Hahn, and the second lieutenant did not move from the doorway until Mr. Seo was 3 floors down, and out through the servants' entrance and into the black car. Down the corridor, Dr. Hahn's polite smile stayed on his face, as if pinned there. He rose, he closed the chart. He walked to his own room and shut the door, and stood in the dark for perhaps 4 seconds. Then he went to his medical bag and unzipped the small inner pocket and took out a phone that was not his usual phone. He typed one word, compromised. Then he began, with great care, to pack. In the small locked room, Lauren heard the sound of a car engine cutting through the courtyard gravel and going, and she understood that something had been sent somewhere, and she pressed her palms flat against her thighs and made herself sit very still. 2 hours passed. She counted them. The door opened at 10 minutes past 5. Taehyun stood in the frame. Behind him, the hallway light was still on, but a gray line had appeared under the drawn curtain at the far end. Dawn was on its way. He looked at her for a moment, the way a man looks at a page he has read wrong. "Come with me," he said. She stood. Her legs did their job. She followed him down the corridor and up the wide staircase, and along the upper landing to his study, and inside the study, Mr. Seo was standing by the desk with a single sheet of paper in his hand, and an expression she had not seen on his face before. Grief and shame and rage held together with grown man discipline. Taehyun closed the door. He did not sit. He did not offer her the chair. He held out his hand for the paper, and Mr. Seo gave it to him, and he laid it flat on the desk beside the row of small glass vials the men had planted in her bag, and he turned it so Lauren could read. She read. Her eyes went first to the substance name, then to the concentration, then to the column labeled onset, and the column labeled clearance. She had seen the drug before. She had seen it in an oncology ward 2 winters ago, prescribed for a dying man who kept trying to climb out of his bed. Sub-therapeutic doses over months, slow release, fatigue, confusion, loss of appetite, the kind of decline that looks so much like a woman getting old. She lifted her eyes. She did not speak. She waited for him to speak. He said, very quietly, "How long did you know?" 12 days. You did not tell me. I had no proof, and you had already told me I was leaving by sunrise. He looked at her for a long time. He looked at the vials on the desk that the men had used to try to break her. He picked one up between his thumb and forefinger and set it back down, and it made a small, clean sound against the wood. He said, "There is one more thing you should see." He went to the low cabinet by the wall and opened it and lifted out something small and soft and dirty white, and he set it on the desk between them. Yuna's rabbit. Lauren's breath caught somewhere behind her collarbone. "She wanted you to have it," Taehyun said. "When Mr. Seo carried her past the servants' hall an hour ago, she was crying because she thought you were gone. She would not sleep without knowing you had it. I told her you would give it back." Lauren reached out. Her fingers found the small, hard lump under the seam by the ear. She did not look at Taehyun. She looked at the rabbit, and she picked up the little silver letter opener from the desk, and she slid the tip along the double-stitched seam, the way she had rehearsed in her head for 12 days. The seam parted. Inside the stuffing, wrapped in a square of oilcloth, was a photograph and a small black plastic rectangle the size of a thumbnail. The photograph was of a young woman with long, straight black hair and a soft, round face, standing in a doorway, holding a baby against her shoulder. The baby had her fist in the woman's collar. The woman was looking at the camera with eyes that were not smiling. Ji-eun. Taehyun did not move. He had not sat down since Lauren had entered the room. He looked at the photograph the way a man looks at a room he lived in a long time ago. Lauren turned it over. Something had been written on the back in blue pen, in careful Hangul. "If you are reading this, I did not come back." She handed the photograph to Taehyun. He took it with fingers that did not tremble because he had spent his life not letting his fingers tremble. He read the back. He set it on the desk. He picked up the small black rectangle and turned it in his hand. A recorder. Yes. He crossed to the shelf where he kept a small speaker and pressed the rectangle to its port. There was a click. There was static. And then a woman's voice, very quiet, very close to the microphone, in Korean. Lauren did not understand the words, but she understood the tone, and she watched Taehyun's face as he understood the words, and she saw the exact second when something in him, that had been standing upright for years, finally sat down. The voice spoke for perhaps 2 minutes. Toward the end, it said one name. It said it twice. The second time, it said it slowly, so the recording would carry it. Han Ji-won. The recording ended. The room was quiet. Taehyun set the recorder down on the desk beside the photograph, and beside the toxicology report, and beside the little glass vials, and he put both his hands flat on the wood and lowered his head, and for a long moment he did not speak. Then he said, in English, without looking up, "Where is he?" Mr. Seo said, "In his room, packing. Do not let him out of the house." "He is not out of the house." Taehyun lifted his head. He looked at Lauren. "I owe you a great deal," he said. She said, "You do not owe me. Your mother owes my mother, and I did not know that either." He blinked once, slowly. "What did you say?" There was a soft knock at the door. Mr. Seo opened it. In the frame stood Madame Soo-yeon Kang, upright, thinner than a woman ought to be, wrapped in the cream cashmere blanket, with its small gold crane at the corner, one hand on the doorframe for balance, and the other hand loose at her side. Her jade pin caught the lamp. Her eyes were clearer than Lauren had ever seen them. She had walked from her room, alone. She looked at her son. She looked at Lauren. She stepped into the room, and Mr. Seo pulled the chair out for her, and she sat, spine straight, the blanket falling neatly around her ankles. She spoke in English. Her English was slow and careful, and the accent was the accent of a woman who had learned it in a very different decade. 12 years ago, she said, there was a bombing at a clinic in Incheon. Small clinic. The men who did it thought I was there because of business. I was not there because of business. I was there because a young Korean-American doctor I trusted had asked me to speak to a nurse who was trying to open a free program for the wives of dock workers. The nurse's name was Diane Hayes. Lauren did not move. When the wall came down, Madame Kang said, I was underneath. My leg was pinned. The dust was so thick I could not see. I could not call. I could hear my own breathing, and I could hear a child screaming somewhere. A child who was not mine. And then a woman's hands were on my shoulders, and a woman's voice was in my ear in a language I did not fully know, and she said, You will not die here today. She lifted the beam off my leg. She carried me to the street. She did not know who I was. She did not stop to ask. When the ambulance came, she gave them my name, and she disappeared into the dust because she had a small child at home that she had left with a neighbor, and she could not stay. Madame Kang folded her hands in her lap. I looked for her for 7 years. When I found her, she would not accept anything. She said she had done what any nurse would do. She said her daughter was going to be a nurse too, one day, and that was payment enough. She said if I wanted to thank her, I could pray for her mother, who was ill. She turned her face toward Lauren. When your mother's illness returned this year, and I heard, through people who watch such things for me, that you were working 16-hour shifts and losing your home, I did the only thing I could do without offending her pride. I had the position advertised in the paper she still reads on Sundays. I asked that the salary be listed high enough that you would circle it. I did not know if you would call. I hoped. Lauren's throat closed. She kept her face still, because a nurse learns to keep her face still. I did not know, Madame Kang went on, that in this house there was already a man planning to unmake me quietly, drug by drug, so that my son would sign what I would not sign. I did not know that when I brought you here to save you, I would be handing you into that man's path. For that I am sorry, my child, very sorry. Lauren said, You did not hand me to him. You handed me a paycheck. What I did with it was mine. Madame Kang's eyes shone once, and then cleared. Taehyun said nothing. He was looking at his mother the way a boy looks at a woman he thought he had finally learned to protect, and realizes he has spent years protecting the wrong door. From the corridor came the small, precise sound of a doorknob turning. Mr. Seo was through the study door before it finished turning, and Taehyun was 2 steps behind him, and Lauren followed because a nurse follows the emergency, and Madame Kang stayed in the chair with her hands folded and her jade pin catching the lamp. At the end of the corridor, Dr. Han Ji-won stood in his overcoat with his black leather medical bag in his left hand and Yuna's small hand in his right. The child was in her cream pinafore and her little cotton coat, the white rabbit gone from her arms because it was on the desk in the study. She was holding Dr. Han's fingers the way a child holds an adult she has been told to trust, and she was looking up at him with a small, confused frown. Dr. Han saw them and smiled his polite, cold smile. Master Kang, I am so glad. I was going to leave a note. Yuna has a scheduled consultation with the child specialist at 7, and given the events of tonight, I thought it best to keep her routine intact. Taehyun did not answer. Lauren stepped past him. She walked down the corridor toward the door. She did not walk quickly. She did not raise her voice. She walked the way she had walked toward crashing patients for 6 years, and when she reached the door, she turned her body sideways in front of it, and she looked at Yuna and she said, gently, in the voice she had used every night at the child's bedside, Yuna, come here, sweetheart. Yuna looked up at her. Yuna let go of Dr. Han's hand. She walked, small, careful steps, past Dr. Han's polished brown loafers, past the strap of the leather medical bag, past Lauren's hip, and she stopped behind Lauren and put both her small hands on the back of Lauren's leg and held on. Dr. Han's smile stayed pinned. He said, in a softer voice, Master Kang, please, there is no need for... Behind Lauren, Mr. Seo had drawn his hand from his jacket. Behind Mr. Seo, Taehyun had reached the middle of the corridor. And behind Taehyun, at the top of the stairs, Madame Kang had risen from her chair inside the study and was standing in the study doorway with the cashmere blanket around her shoulders like a robe of state, her jade pin bright.
Taehyun said, set down the bag.
Dr. Han set down the bag. Step back from the door. Dr. Han stepped back. Taehyun said, Mr. Seo, take him. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. Mr. Seo moved. In 4 seconds, Dr. Han was against the wall with his wrists behind him, and the second lieutenant was at his elbow, and in 8 more seconds, the 2 of them had walked him down the corridor and out through the door at the far end that led to the courtyard and to a car that had been waiting since Mr. Seo returned. The polite, cold smile did not leave Dr. Han's face until the door closed behind him. Then, from the other side of the door, no sound came at all. The corridor was very quiet. Yuna had not let go of Lauren's leg. Lauren knelt. She turned. She lifted the child into her arms and settled her weight on her hip the way she had settled her 100 times before, and Yuna put her face in Lauren's neck and did not cry. Taehyun was standing 3 steps away. He looked at his mother in the study doorway. He looked at his daughter in Lauren's arms. He looked at Lauren. Lauren said, quietly, "I am going home in the morning." Something moved in his face and was still again. "I have a mother in a hospital bed in Yonkers," she said. "I have a house I need to keep. I came here for a paycheck. I got the paycheck. Your mother is safe. Your daughter is safe. My work here is done." Yuna lifted her head from Lauren's neck. "Are you going to disappear too?" she asked, in a voice so small it barely reached the walls. Lauren closed her eyes for one breath. Behind her, at the far window, the gray line under the curtain had turned to gold. Somewhere in the city, a bird had started. Taehyun went down onto one knee on the marble. He did not do it dramatically. He did it the way a man kneels who has spent his entire life standing. He put one knee down and he put his forearm across the other knee, and he looked up at his daughter, who was on the hip of a woman whose name he had said perhaps 12 times in 29 days, and he spoke to Yuna in English so that Lauren would hear every word. "No one in this house," he said, "will ever force her to stay." Yuna's hand tightened in Lauren's collar. "But if she leaves," he said, "she leaves knowing she is the first woman I have ever trusted completely." He did not look away from his daughter as he said it. He said it to Yuna the way a father tells a child the true thing, and he let Lauren overhear it the way a woman is meant to overhear a truth she was not meant to be given. Then he lifted his eyes. Lauren stood in the corridor with a Korean child on her hip and a Korean matriarch in the doorway behind her, and the first sunlight of the morning on her cheek. She had been in a locked room 3 hours ago, with vials of a drug that did not belong to her, arranged on a desk to break her. She had walked out with the truth in her hand and a child in her arms. She looked at Taehyun on one knee on the marble. She thought of her mother, who had lifted a beam off a stranger in a bombed clinic 12 years ago and had walked away because there was a small child at home. She thought of the small child at home. She stepped forward. She held out her free hand. Taehyun took it. He rose. He did not pull her toward him. He simply held her hand, palm to palm, and let her decide what the distance between them would be, and Lauren looked at him for a long, steady moment and did not pull her hand away. Down at the end of the corridor, Madame Kang, from the doorway of the study, watched her son stand hand in hand with a black woman in a wrinkled white blouse and no makeup and dust on her shoes, and she nodded to herself, one small, dignified nod, the way a woman nods at a debt paid in full. Yuna put her head back down on Lauren's shoulder. The gold under the curtain grew brighter. Outside, somewhere far away, another bird started. And in the great quiet hallway of the house that had held so many secrets, no one said anything else, because there was nothing left that needed to be said out loud. Lauren Hayes did not leave that morning. She stayed for breakfast. Breakfast lasted 11 minutes. Lauren counted, the way she counted anything she could not control. Yuna ate half a piece of toast and drank warm milk in small, careful sips, her rabbit propped against the sugar bowl like a fourth guest. Madame Kang took 3 spoonfuls of rice porridge and closed her eyes between each one, as if tasting food had become a decision. Taehyun did not sit at the table. He stood by the window with a black coffee and watched the driveway through the gap in the curtain, one hand in his trouser pocket, the other around the cup. At minute 9, a phone buzzed inside his jacket. He looked at the screen, put it back, and set the cup down on the sill without a sound. "Miss Hayes," he said. Lauren wiped Yuna's mouth with a napkin and stood. Yuna's fingers went to the hem of her cardigan and held on. "It's all right," Lauren said. "I'll be right back." She followed him across the marble floor to the study. He closed the door behind her and did not sit down. "The lab you asked for," he said. "How long does an outside test take?" "With a real courier, 6 hours. With yours, 4. Draw the sample tonight. Second round of vials. Not the ones Dr. Han hands you. He'll notice. Then be faster than him. She held his gaze. There was a thin muscle working at the corner of his jaw that had not been working a minute ago. Whatever the phone had told him, it had moved something. What happened? She asked. He walked to the desk. He did not open the drawer. He tapped the wood twice with the flat of his fingers and stopped. My mother had a bad night, he said. The kind she does not have when you're the one on shift. I was on shift. You were with Yuna. Dr. Han took the room. Lauren felt the cold begin at the back of her neck and travel down. She had left Madame Kang with him at 1 a.m. because Yuna had woken screaming, and because she had trusted, for one bad minute, that a doctor was a doctor. He'll be here after lunch, before he arrives. He looked at her a second longer than he had ever looked at her. Then he nodded, small, once, and opened the door for her without another word. The chart was thicker than it had been on Monday. Someone had added 2 pages. Lauren stood at the foot of the bed in the pale morning light and read backward from the last entry, her finger moving line by line, her mouth soft, her breath slow. Madame Kang slept in the huge cream bed the way a bird sleeps, small, tucked, folded in on herself. The jade pendant had slipped sideways on the pillow. New dosage on the sedative, not doubled, increased by a fraction so precise that a nurse who did not know the patient would sign it and move on. A note in Dr. Han's handwriting, patient distress at 1:40, mild agitation, adjustment approved verbally, no second signature, no time-stamped call. Lauren closed the chart. She wrote nothing. She put it back on the tray exactly where she had found it, the corner touching the water glass, the pen laid across it at the same angle. She drew the sample at 12:14, when the day nurse rotated off and the hallway was empty for 4 minutes. 2 vials, one from the IV port, one from the arm, both labeled with initials only, and slipped into the inner pocket of her white apron. She walked past the kitchen, past the sunroom, past Mr. Seo standing by the front door with his hands folded in front of him, and she handed the small padded envelope to the courier without stopping. Mr. Seo did not turn his head. He did not need to. At 1:07, Dr. Han arrived. He set his black bag on the console table by the entrance, the way he always did, unbuckled the brass clasps, and greeted the housekeeper by name. He climbed the stairs at his usual pace. He asked after Yuna. He complimented the flowers. He walked into Madame Kang's room and stopped 1 step past the threshold. Lauren was already there, in the reading chair by the window, chart on her lap, pen in her hand, no expression on her face at all. "Miss Hayes," he said, "you're early." "I never left." His polite, cold smile stayed exactly where it was. "May I?" He gestured at the chart. "Of course." She handed it to him and watched his hands. The right thumb pressed the corner where she had folded it 0.5 millimeter to see if he would notice. He did. He smoothed it flat without looking down. "She had a difficult night," he said. "You must have been exhausted with the child." "I was." "I adjusted the dose. Standard practice." Verbal approval from whom? He looked up. The gold-rimmed glasses caught the light. "From Mr. Kang. He told me this morning he was not called." The pen in his hand stopped moving. "You must have misunderstood, Miss Hayes. Mr. Kang has a great deal on his mind. He remembers his phone." A silence. 2 seconds. The clock on the mantel filled them. "I think," Dr. Han said gently, "we should speak downstairs, privately. After my shift." "Now." "After my shift." He set the chart down on the tray. He set it down carefully, the corner touching the water glass, the pen laid across it at exactly the wrong angle by a hair, and Lauren saw the correction cost him something he was not used to spending. He left the room without another word. At 2:20 her phone rang. She was in the sunroom with Yuna, building a tower of colored blocks that Yuna kept knocking down and rebuilding taller. She stepped into the corridor to answer. It was the neighbor. Diane had collapsed in the kitchen. The ambulance was there. They were taking her to Bellevue. Lauren said, "Which unit?" The neighbor was crying and could not remember. "Which unit? Breathe. Tell me." "Cardiac." They said cardiac. "I'll call you back in 10 minutes. She hung up. She stood in the corridor for 1 full second, with her hand flat against the wall. She felt the plaster under her palm. She counted the tiles on the floor, from where her foot met the edge to the far door. 12. She turned and walked back into the sunroom. Yuna looked up from the blocks with the rabbit in her lap. "Sweet girl," Lauren said, and she knelt so their faces were level. "I need to make some phone calls. Miss Hanna is going to sit with you for a little while. You keep building. Make it taller than last time." Yuna's chin trembled. She held the rabbit tighter. "Are you coming back?" "Yes." "Say it the other way." Lauren looked at her. Yuna had learned, somewhere in the last week, that promises had to be made in the exact right shape or they did not stick. "I am coming back to this room today," Lauren said. "In this house, before the sky is dark." Yuna nodded. She went back to the blocks. Lauren walked out and did not run, because Mr. Park was at the end of the corridor watching her, and running was information she was not going to give him for free. She called Bellevue from the linen closet. She kept her voice at nurse volume, professional, low, and she got the resident on the line in 90 seconds, because she used the words that got residents on the line in 90 seconds. Diane was stable. Diane was on a drip. Diane needed a medication that cost $2,300 and was not on the emergency formulary. The resident could hold her for 6 hours. After that, the hospital was going to discharge her to a shelter clinic because the paperwork on file said no insurance and no next of kin able to pay. "I am the next of kin," Lauren said. "I'm coming." She hung up. She stood in the dark of the linen closet with the smell of clean cotton around her, and she did not cry, because crying used minutes she did not have. She was walking down the main staircase with her coat over her arm when Mr. Park stepped out from the alcove by the front door. "Miss Hayes, I have a family emergency. Mr. Kang would like a word first." After. Now. 2 more men had appeared at the base of the stairs. She had not heard them come in. Mr. Seo was not among them. She walked with Mr. Park because there was no version of this hallway where she did not. The study door was already open. Taehyun stood behind his desk, in the black shirt, with the sleeves rolled to his forearms, the tiger claw tattoo showing at the wrist. 4 men she had never seen sat in the chairs along the wall. On the desk, in the exact center of the leather blotter, were 3 small glass vials. Beside them, her white canvas work bag, open. Beside the bag, a folded piece of paper. She stopped 1 step inside the door. Taehyun did not tell her to sit. "These were found in your bag," he said, "by Dr. Han, 20 minutes ago. By him or with him watching." One of the men on the wall shifted. Another laughed once, small and dry, and then his face went flat. "They are controlled substances from my mother's supply. I know what they are. Do you know what happens in this house to people who take from my mother?" She looked at him. She looked at the vials. She looked at the paper. "May I see the paper?" He did not move for a beat. Then he pushed it across the desk with 2 fingers. It was a note, unsigned, in handwriting she was going to recognize inside a week if she lived that long. "The night nurse takes what she came for. Check her bag." She set the paper back down on the wood. "My mother collapsed 40 minutes ago," Lauren said. "In Manhattan. She is in Bellevue. She has 6 hours before they move her to a shelter clinic." The room did not move. "I did not put anything in that bag. Dr. Han did. He did it because he could not get me out of this house any other way. He adjusted your mother's dose last night without a witness. I sent 2 vials of her blood to an outside lab at 12:14 today. The results will be with a courier at your gate before sunset." She stopped. She heard her own breath. "I am not going to beg. I am not going to explain. I am going to say one thing, and then I am going to walk out of this room to see my mother. If you send men after me on the sidewalk, they will find a black nurse crying at a hospital bed. That is what they will find." "And the one thing?" Taehyun said. "Check your mother's blood, then decide." Somewhere above them, on the 2nd floor, a child began to scream. It was not the night terror scream. Lauren knew that one. This was the daylight scream, thin and rising, the sound of a 5-year-old who had understood something adults thought she could not understand. "Yuna," Lauren said. She moved before Mr. Park could step in front of her. She was on the stairs by the time the 4 men had stood up. She was on the landing by the time Taehyun had come out from behind the desk. Yuna was at the top of the 2nd flight in her cream pajamas, the rabbit hanging by one paw from her fist, both feet planted on the marble, screaming a single word over and over that Lauren could not make out until she was 3 steps away. "Stay! Stay! Stay! Stay!" Lauren caught her under the arms and lifted her. Yuna wrapped both legs around her waist and pressed her wet face into Lauren's neck and did not stop the word, only quieter now, into skin. Lauren carried her to the top of the stairs and turned so her back was to the men below. She held the small hot body against her and rocked once, slow, the way she had rocked her mother through the worst nights of the last 3 years. "I hear you," she said. "I hear you, sweet girl." She lifted her eyes. Taehyun was halfway up the flight. He had stopped with one hand on the banister. Behind him, Mr. Park had not moved past the base. Behind Mr. Park, the 4 men were standing in the entrance to the study with their hands loose at their sides, waiting for a signal that had not come. Lauren looked down at Taehyun over the top of his daughter's head. "Your mother is being poisoned in your own house," she said. "Your child knows it. She has known it for weeks. She is screaming because the only person in this building who was going to prove it is being walked out the door with a bag full of planted vials. That is what is happening. You do what you want with that." She did not raise her voice. She did not lower it. She spoke the way she spoke to residents at 3 a.m. when a chart was wrong and a patient was going to die if she did not make them hear her in one try. Taehyun's hand tightened on the banister. The tendons on the back of it stood up under the skin. He turned his head, without taking his eyes off her, and spoke to the hallway below. "Nobody leaves this house until the courier comes through the gate," he said. "Nobody, not the doctor, not the nurse, not any of you." He looked back at her. "You are not going to Bellevue alone. Then send someone with a checkbook and a car and a phone that works. My mother has 6 hours. Mr. Seo," he said, without raising his voice. Mr. Seo appeared at the base of the stairs as if he had been standing 3 feet out of sight the whole time. He probably had. "Take Miss Hayes to Bellevue, cardiac unit. Pay the bill in full, in cash, on arrival. Wait with her mother until Miss Hayes returns. Do not leave that hospital room for any reason. If anyone from this house calls you and tells you to leave, you call me directly. Anyone." "Yes, sir." "Take Mr. Choi with you. He stays in the corridor." "Yes, sir." Taehyun climbed the last steps and stopped 1 arm's length from Lauren. He looked at Yuna, whose small hand had come out from under Lauren's collar to grip a fistful of his black shirt without her lifting her head from Lauren's neck. He did not touch his daughter. He looked at Lauren over her. "When the results come," he said, "if you are lying, I will find you in that hospital. I know. If you are not lying, the man who did this will not see another sunrise in this house. I know that too." He did not move for another second. Then he reached out, slow, and put one hand on the back of his daughter's head. Yuna did not flinch. She let him. His fingers were careful in her black hair, the way a man is careful with something he does not remember how to hold. "Go," he said. Lauren carried Yuna 3 steps down the hall and knelt and pried her, gently, off her body. Yuna's eyes were red, her fringe was stuck to her forehead. "I said before the sky is dark," Lauren said. "I meant it." Yuna held out the rabbit. "Take him. He goes where you go, until you come back." Lauren took the rabbit. She tucked it under her arm the way Yuna carried it, one paw down. "He is very brave," she said. "He can handle a hospital." Yuna nodded. She turned and walked, without looking back, into her father's legs, and Taehyun, after a beat, put his hand on her shoulder and let her stand there against him, small and warm, and no longer screaming. Lauren was in the car with Mr. Seo before the front door closed behind her. He did not speak on the drive down. He drove fast and clean, one hand on the wheel, the other flat on his thigh, the black shirt buttoned to the throat, the silver ring catching light every time he changed lanes. When they pulled up at the Bellevue emergency bay, he was out of the car before the valet reached the door, and by the time Lauren had crossed the sidewalk, he had the cashier's window open and was counting bills onto the counter in stacks so neat the clerk stopped chewing gum. Diane was in bed, 6. Her eyes opened when Lauren's hand touched hers. Her lips were dry. The oxygen line ran under her nose. The silver cross had slid to the side of her neck. "Baby," she whispered. "I'm here, Mama. You shouldn't have." "Hush, the bill is paid. The medication is coming up from pharmacy. You're staying in this room until I take you home." Diane closed her eyes. A tear slid down into the pillow. Lauren sat on the edge of the bed and held her mother's hand and put the stuffed rabbit on the blanket between them, one paw down, the way Yuna carried it. Outside the curtain, Mr. Seo stood with his back to the room and his face to the corridor, and Mr. Choi stood at the elevators. And somewhere uptown, a courier was carrying 2 glass vials through afternoon traffic toward a lab that had no idea whose blood it was going to test. Lauren looked at the clock on the wall above her mother's bed. 3 hours until sunset, 4 hours until the results, 6 hours until a man in a white doctor's coat would put his hand on a brass clasp for the last time in that house, and not know it yet. She squeezed her mother's fingers. She waited. The nurse came back with a chart Lauren did not need to read. Diane's numbers were climbing the wrong direction, and the woman in the bed knew it before anyone said it out loud. She turned her head toward her daughter and gave the smallest smile, the one she used when Lauren was 7 and had scraped a knee she was trying not to cry about. "You're somewhere else, baby. I'm right here. No, your body's here. Your head's already on that road back." Lauren looked at the window instead of at her mother. The blinds were half open. A slice of hallway light lay across the linoleum, like a line she had not decided whether to step over. "Mom, if I go back tonight." "Go." "You don't even know where I'm going." "I know your face." Diane shifted, and the shifting cost her. "I know the face you make when you left something unfinished. You made it when you were 9, and forgot to feed the neighbor's cat. You're making it now for something a whole lot bigger than a cat." Lauren almost laughed. It came out as a breath. The IV pump ticked. The heart monitor kept its slow, patient count. Down the corridor, a phone rang twice and stopped. "There's a little girl," Lauren said. She had not meant to say it. It walked out of her on its own. Diane closed her eyes for a second, then opened them. "Then go get her." Lauren stood. She kissed her mother's forehead, right at the hairline where the silver curls started, and she felt her mother's hand come up and rest briefly on the back of her neck. It was the lightest touch. It weighed everything. In the hallway, she pulled her phone out and stared at the black screen before she pressed anything. She did not call Taehyun, she called Mr. Seo. "I'm coming back," she said. "Get me through the gate. The car is already outside your mother's building." She stopped walking. Since when? Since you got in this morning. She stepped into the elevator and the doors slid shut on the silver sliver of hospital corridor, and she watched her own reflection in the brushed steel, hair pulled back, jaw set, the small silver cross on Diane's chain now in Lauren's coat pocket, because Diane had put it there while she was pretending to sleep. The SUV was where he said it would be. Mr. Park was not driving. Mr. CO himself was at the wheel, which meant something, and Lauren understood what it meant without having to be told. She got in the back. He pulled into traffic without looking at her. He ran the labs, CO said finally. And? You were right. She let out a breath she had been holding in some deep part of her chest since 3 a.m. She did not celebrate. Being right about a thing like that was not the kind of right anyone celebrated. What did he do? He is thinking. He doesn't have time to think. If Han knows the sample was pulled, he moves tonight. That is why I came for you. The city thinned, the bridge lights strung out along the water, and then the road turned inland, and the street lamps disappeared, and there was only the black of trees, and the two beams of the headlights making a road out of nothing. Lauren watched the dark and did not feel the quiet. They came up the long drive, and the mansion sat there the way it always sat there, cream stone and cold windows, and yet tonight, something in it looked different to her, like a house that had finally noticed it was sick. The gate rolled open. Mr. CO stopped the car under the portico. He is in the study. Yuna. Sleeping. Madam is sleeping too. For now. For now, Lauren repeated. She got out. The gravel was loud under her shoes in a way it had never been loud before, because she was listening for everything now, for a second car, for footsteps behind a hedge, for the click of a door somewhere it should not be. The front door opened before she reached it. Taehyun stood in the frame. Not in a suit. Black shirt, sleeves rolled to mid-forearm, the small claw shape on his inner wrist showing. He looked at her like a man who had spent the last 3 hours choosing between two things and had chosen the harder one. You came back. I told you I would. You told me you were leaving. Both are true. He stepped aside. She walked past him into the foyer, and the marble was so bright under the low chandeliers that her own shadow followed her longer than she liked. The blood work, she said. Slow release. Not on any chart in this house. Not on any prescription he ever signed. Someone was mixing it into the evening infusion, an hour before he arrived. Park worked for him. He does not know it yet. When will he know it? When I decide. She turned to face him. Where is Yuna? On the 3rd floor. Sleeping. Alone? Never alone. Show me. He did. They walked the corridor together, and neither of them spoke, and the house was so quiet she could hear the second hand of the grandfather clock in the landing below. Yuna's door was open a hand's width. A small night lamp threw a soft circle onto the rug. The stuffed rabbit lay on the pillow beside her, ear flat against her cheek. Lauren stepped inside. She sat on the edge of the bed the way she had sat on it every night for weeks, and she watched the child breathe, and she thought about a woman named Jiun she had never met. May I? She said. Taehyun understood. He nodded once. Lauren lifted the rabbit gently. She turned it over in her lap. She ran her fingertip along the seam that ran under one arm, the seam that had been sewn by hand, not by factory, with a tiny knot at the end that no adult had noticed because no adult had looked. She had noticed it 3 nights ago while brushing dust off the fur. She had not touched it then. She was touching it now. She loosened the knot. She eased her nail under the first stitch. The thread gave. 2 things came out of the little pocket the seam had hidden. A folded photograph, softened by time, and a plastic card the size of a matchbook, black, with a single silver ridge along one edge, a voice recorder, the small kind that clipped inside a lapel. She did not open the photograph in front of the child. She stood, and carried both objects to the hallway. Taehyun closed Yuna's door behind them soundlessly. Under the sconce, he unfolded the picture with the pad of his thumb. Jiun. Lauren had never seen her, and yet she knew her immediately, because Yuna's mouth was in that face, and Yuna's eyes were in that face, and in Jiun's arms was a baby wrapped in a pale cream blanket, and on the back of the picture, in a woman's careful handwriting, 4 words. If I disappear, listen. Taehyun's hand did not shake. Lauren watched it very closely, and it did not shake, which told her more than shaking would have. Where? He said, and it was not a question about the recorder. Kitchen, the pantry is soundproof enough. They went down together. She did not ask permission for anything now, and he did not offer it. In the pantry, she set the recorder on the marble counter and pressed the ridge with her thumbnail. The little speaker gave one soft click, and then a woman's voice came out of it, tired and low and rehearsed. The voice of a person who had said the same sentence to herself many times before saying it into a machine. My name is Kang Ji-eun. If you are hearing this, I did not leave. Dr. Han Ji-won came to me on the 4th of October. He said Yuna's blood work showed something they needed to treat quietly, and he wanted me to sign a form. The form was not a treatment form. It was a transfer of guardianship. When I refused, he told me that if I stayed in this house, my daughter would develop symptoms of a disease she does not have. He said the same thing had already begun with Madam Kang. He said he had been paid a great deal of money by people who want this family to end from the inside. If I go, Yuna is safe. If I stay, they take her from me a different way. I am recording this because one day someone will pick up her rabbit and feel the seam. I hope that someone loves her. Tell her I did not choose to go. Tell her every night I said her name. Silence in the pantry. The refrigerator hummed the way it had always hummed, and now the hum was obscene. Taehyun set both hands on the counter and lowered his head between his shoulders. He did not make a sound. He held that shape for the time it took Lauren to count 6 of her own heartbeats, and then he lifted his head, and his face had gone completely still, in a way that was worse than any expression. Where is he sleeping tonight? He said. Guest wing, east side. He will not sleep. Taehyun. He looked at her. Not tonight. Do it right, do it clean. He walks out of here in the morning in a car that is not his. He held her look. Then he nodded once, the way he had nodded at Yuna's door. They went upstairs to Madam Kang. The matriarch was awake. She had been awake, Lauren suspected, since the car pulled up the drive, because her eyes went to the door before the door moved. The jade pin at her bun caught a small piece of lamplight. Sit, she said. Lauren sat on the chair beside the bed. Taehyun stood at the foot. Madam Kang looked at her son first, and something passed between them that Lauren did not try to read, and then she turned her thin, composed face to Lauren. 12 years ago, Madam Kang said, there was a clinic in Busan, a private one. My husband and I were meeting a lawyer there because it was quiet. Someone put a device in the wall behind the reception desk. The wall came down. I was on the floor with my ribs broken and my ears full of nothing, and a woman I had never seen picked me up and carried me 2 blocks to a taxi before the second team arrived to make sure of the job. She was a nurse from the county hospital across the water. She was in the city for a conference. She did not know who I was. She did not ask my name for 3 days. When she asked, I gave her a false one. Lauren's throat closed. She held her spine straight. I have watched your mother for 12 years, Madam Kang said, from a distance. But I paid for her insurance when the hospital changed carriers, and she did not know why her premium stayed low. I paid the pharmacy the month you could not. And when I learned my own body was being touched by hands that did not love it, I told Seo to place an advertisement where a young woman with a foreclosure notice on her door might see it. I did not put you here to save me. I put you here because a debt like that has a name. And the name was written on the back of that door for you to find. Lauren looked at her hands. They were open on her knees. She did not know when she had opened them. You could have told me. You would not have believed me. You had to see. I've seen. Yes. Madame Kang turned her head toward her son. Do what needs to be done, but not in this house, not with the child in it. No, he said. Outside the window, the sky had begun to soften along the ridge of trees, the first gray ahead of blue. Downstairs, in the guest wing, a door opened. Lauren heard it because she had been listening for it since the recorder clicked off. Taehyun heard it because he had been listening for it his entire life. He moved once, and she moved with him, and Madame Kang, in her bed, said only, "Bring the girl to me first." Lauren went up the small back stairs 2 at a time. She lifted Yuna from her bed. The child made a soft sound and put her arms around Lauren's neck without waking properly, the rabbit dragging from her small fingers by one ear. "Where?" Yuna breathed against her collarbone. "Halmione." "Okay." She carried her down the corridor and laid her in the bed beside Madame Kang, who closed her thin hand around her granddaughter's wrist and did not let go. "Go," the old woman said. Lauren went. She reached the top of the main staircase as Dr. Han reached the bottom of it. He was dressed, coat buttoned, medical bag in his left hand. The little silver pen was clipped in place. He looked up at her, and his polite, cold smile arrived exactly on cue. "Miss Hayes, I did not expect you back tonight." "I bet you didn't." "I am taking Yuna to a specialist. A small procedure. Her father approved it last week. Her father is upstairs." He was upstairs. He signed the paperwork at midnight. "Show me." His smile stayed on. His fingers moved to the inside pocket of his coat. Lauren walked down the stairs. She did not run. She reached the last step before he reached the door. She placed her body in front of the door, with her back to the wood and her hands loose at her sides. "Move, Miss Hayes." "No, you are interfering with medical care. I'm interfering with a kidnapping." His face did the thing faces do when a mask cracks along a line the wearer did not know was there. It was very small. It was there. Behind her, the front door did not move because she was against it. Behind him, from the shadow of the corridor, Mr. Seo stepped out and drew from his shoulder holster in one clean motion and held the weapon down along his thigh without raising it. At the top of the stairs, Taehyun appeared. He did not speak. He came down the staircase the way a man comes down a staircase he has come down 1,000 times, and when he reached the landing between the 2 flights he stopped, and he looked at Dr. Han the way a man looks at a wall he is about to walk through. "Jiwon. Taehyun, there is a very reasonable—" "Set the bag on the floor." Han's fingers tightened around the handle. "Set the bag on the floor." The bag went down. It settled onto the marble with a small, precise click. "Step away from Miss Hayes." He stepped. Taehyun came down the last flight. He stopped a pace from the doctor. He did not lift his hands. "You wrote a script for my mother. You wrote a script for my daughter. You wrote a script for the wife you drove out of this house. You wrote a lot of scripts, Jiwon. Tonight I am closing the book." "Taehyun." "Mr. Seo." Seo moved forward. He put one hand on the doctor's shoulder and turned him toward the side corridor, toward the small door that opened onto the service courtyard, where the car that was not his was already waiting with its parking lights on and its engine off. Han did not fight. Men like Han never fought at the end. They only kept trying to speak. Seo did not let him. The door closed behind them. The sound it made was very quiet. Lauren was still against the front door. She had not moved. Taehyun turned to her. "You can step away now." "I know." She did not step away. She looked at him across the small piece of foyer between them, and she watched the man he had been trying not to be for 35 years look back at her, and she understood, in the seconds before she said what she was going to say, that this was the last easy moment either of them was going to have for a while. "I'm still leaving." He did not react. He waited. "Not tonight, not tomorrow. But this house isn't mine, Taehyun. I have a mother in a hospital bed and a life I put down to come save yours. When it's quiet again, I go back to it." "I know." "Do you?" "Yes." Behind them, from the top of the stairs, a small voice. "Are you going to disappear too?" They both turned. Yuna was on the landing in her pale pink pajamas, the rabbit clutched by its middle now, her fringe stuck to her forehead where she had been sleeping on it. Madame Kang stood behind her, one thin hand on the child's shoulder, letting her walk this last piece on her own. Yuna did not come down. She waited on the top step because at 5 years old, you already know that the answer to a question like that is not something you chase. You stand still and you let it come to you. Taehyun looked at his daughter. He looked at Lauren. He walked past Lauren to the foot of the staircase, and there, on the marble that his own grandfather had chosen and his own father had walked, he lowered himself to one knee. He did not lower his head. He kept his eyes on the child. "No one in this house will ever force her to stay, Yunaya. Not you, not Halmione, not me. If she goes because she chooses to. But if she leaves this house, she leaves knowing she is the first woman I have ever trusted completely." Yuna considered this the way small children consider things, with her whole small face working through it. Then she came down the stairs. She did not go to her father. She walked past him. She walked to Lauren, and she raised her arms, and Lauren picked her up, and the rabbit's torn ear brushed Lauren's jaw. "Don't disappear," Yuna said into her neck. "I won't." "Promise." "I promise." Beyond the tall windows, the sky had gone from gray to blue along the edge of the trees, and the first low light was reaching the courtyard stones, and somewhere at the back of the house, an engine started once and pulled away and did not return. Lauren set Yuna down gently at Madame Kang's side. She walked across the foyer to where Taehyun was still on one knee, and she stopped in front of him, and she looked at him for a long moment before she reached down. She took his hand. He rose. They did not speak. He held her hand the way a man holds something he has waited a long time to be allowed to hold, carefully, and without closing his fingers all the way around, so that she could let go whenever she wanted to. She did not let go. Behind them, Madame Kang stood at the top of the stairs with her granddaughter beside her, and the old woman's face, in the new light, looked less like the face of an invalid and more like the face of a woman who had, at last, put down a weight she had been carrying since a bombed clinic in Busan 12 years ago. Outside, the sun cleared the ridge. The marble in the foyer went gold from one wall to the other, and in that gold, Lauren Hayes stood beside Kang Taehyun with his hand in hers, and above them a child watched them and did not cry, and behind the child an old woman closed her eyes and breathed in something that had not been in the air of that house for a very long time. Peace. The quiet kind, the kind you earn. Lauren did not smile, neither did he. Some things are bigger than a smile. She turned her head, once, toward the tall windows and the day beginning outside them, and she thought of Diane in her hospital bed, and of a woman named Ji-eun in a photograph, and of a mother named Soo-yeon at the top of the stairs. 3 women across 3 worlds and a debt paid in full, and a child who would grow up knowing the name of the woman who did not disappear. She squeezed Taehyun's hand once, lightly. Once was enough. He squeezed back. Outside the birds started. Inside the house, for the first time in a long time, no one was afraid. If this story moved you, stop for a moment and reflect. Have you ever walked into a stranger's house in a uniform, my loves, and understood the truth of that family before the family did? Have you ever seen a child cling to you because no one else in the room was safe? Mark my words, when a quiet woman refuses to beg, powerful men finally learn how to listen. Tell us your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read them all. And if you believe in stories about dignity, hidden truths, and love earned across worlds, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a part of our community and help the channel.